Yesterday we discussed Rabbi Eiger and Rabbi Chaim, and I want to review that. There's a machlokes whether ubar yerech imo or lav yerech imo, and Tosfos here in Sanhedrin says that there's gerus doraisa in a Katan when the mother converted while she was pregnant. And the gerus of the mother operates and is effective for the vlad, for the ubar, such that the ubar is born Jewish, even though there's no din of zechia, because zechia is mitam shlichus, and a katan is excluded from shlichus. And certainly in the case of a guy, he doesn't even anticipate coming into shlichus. So we have to somehow circumvent the need for zach and the other shlo b'fanav in the case of gerus of a katan. And we can achieve that goal in the case where a mother, a non-Jewish woman who's pregnant, undergoes gerus, and her gerus is meaningful for the vlad, for the uber as well. And we don't need zach and the other shlo b'fanav, because there's one gerus that encompasses both the mother and the uber, and she has das. The mother's das is sufficient to generate this gerus, which includes the vlad, the uber as well. So Rabbi Eiger is bothered by the fact that there is one man b'yomer that says uber lav yerech imo, and therefore the uber as a separate entity, separate from his mother, needs his own gerus. And then we're going to have to come on to Zoch and the Olam Shlo B'fanav, which we cannot have, and we're left with Tosfos' Kash. So here's where we introduce the insight of Reb Chaim Brisker, and he claims, based on a Gemara in Yevamos Daf Tzadik Zayin Amud Beis, in the case of a woman who was holding on to twins. The fetuses are twins, two brothers. And the Gemara says that if this woman undergoes gerus, and that's called, in the case where she's pregnant, that's called hora'asa shelo b'kedusha, but leidasa b'kedusha, then the two brothers are considered brothers, and therefore the erev of Eishes Ach will apply, and the din of Yibum will apply. And the question is, how do you work that out if you hold Uber Lav Yerech Imo? If Uber Lav Yerech Imo, then each one of the twin boys, in this case, requires and undergoes his own personal gerus, and he's Kikot Sheh Nolad Domi, therefore he's not related to his brother. Why does the Gemara assume he's related to his brother if you hold Uber Lav Yerech Imo? So Reb Chaim says that even though Uber Lav Yerech Imo, as far as the Chefts is concerned, as far as the Guf is concerned, and each one of the two twins is a Guf Bifnei Atzmo, requires his own Tefillah, but that's only as far as the Maisa Gerus is concerned, the Maisa Tefillah, but as far as the Chalos Gerus is concerned, it's not two different Chalos Gerusim. There's not a separate gerus for the uber and a separate gerus for the mother. Even if I hold the uber lav yerech imo, nevertheless it's one gerus. The chalos gerus is one indivisible gerus that encompasses both the mother and the uber. And therefore, if there's one gerus, as far as the gavra is concerned, and the uber is not considered a separate gavra, although he's a separate chefta, because we're holding now lav yerech imo, but he's not a separate gavra, then the mother and the ubar are halachically one gavra, and there's one gerus that encompasses both the mother and the vlad, and in this case the mother and the two vlados, the two brothers, and therefore we don't have to come on to the din of zoch and the other shlo b'fanav, since there's one gerus, and the das of the mother supplies the das of gerus, even on behalf of the Uber, but not through the Parsha of Zechia and Shlichus, but simply because it's one indivisible chalos gerus that applies to both the mother and the child as one God. So that is more or less a summary of what we discussed yesterday. Now, if we read the next line in Tosfos, we are very surprised. Tosfos writes, the efshar hashta the achrichein yoreshes imo. Meaning that if this non-Jewish woman who's pregnant undergoes gerus, and that gerus is meaningful and effective for the child as well, as we said before, it's one gavra and one entity of gerus for both the mother and the child, then Tosfos says the child will inherit his mother. And that fits in very beautifully with what we said in the name of Reb Chaim, that it's one gavra. And if it's one gavra, we don't apply the principle of Katan Shenolad Dam. And therefore, Tosfos says we now have an answer to our original question: how could a ger Katan have mama? And the answer is that in this scenario, he inherits his mother. Because in the Havamina, Tosfos says, well, Katan Shenolad Dam, and therefore he doesn't inherit his mother. But now that we're saying that there's one gerus that's chal on both the mother and the vlad and the ubar, without a separate gerus for the child, and therefore we're not going to apply the principle of Katan Shenolad Dam, then he should inherit his mother when she dies. And now we have a solution to the problem how this ger Katan could have mama. Such that now if somebody steals his mama, which he inherited from his mother, and takes a shvua in which he lies under oath, then later on he's going to have to bring a carbon asham zela. But Tosfos used the word efshar, which means that Tosfos doubts whether or not this child will inherit his mother. Now, we just finished saying that as far as the gerus is concerned, there's one gerus that encompasses both the mother and the vlad. So why shouldn't this son inherit his mother? Now, inheritance laws depends upon what's called mishpacha. And apparently, this is a research project, apparently the laws of mishpacha for Yerusha are not identical with relatives the definition of relatives as far as arayos are concerned, as far as sher basar. So once there's a gerus that encompasses both the mother and the son, then they are related as far as sher basar is concerned. And we're not going to apply the principle of Katan shenoled them. So the erva of imo would apply, and if the two brothers, the erva of eshes ach would apply in the midst of the field and yimu. But that doesn't necessarily determine the laws of Yerusha. For Yerusha, we have separate dinim of mishpacha. All right, that has to be studied. Now, let's mention a different method of gerus for a katan, which I don't know if Tosfos has this in mind, but the Rambam in Hilchos Avodim, maybe we'll find it. The Rambam has a case of kavush tachas yad Yisrael. That if the Jew, let's say the Jews, what word could I use? They dominate. They have control or jurisdiction. Maybe that would be a good word. They have jurisdiction over the Goyim. The Goyim are very rare in Jewish history, but the Goyim are subservient to the Jews. So the Rambam establishes at the end of Hilchos Avodim that the Jew could take a guy who's a katan, and he could be megayer him and be code him as an eved. So that's a din of kibush, where the Jews have they have jurisdiction or autonomy over the goyim, and through kibush they can actually conquer, so to speak, for lack of a better word right now, a katan, a goy katan, and be megayer him against his will. And the Yisrael will now supply the das for the gerus. So that could be another example and another solution of Tosfos' problem. How could he have a ger katan when there's no das and there's no zchiyah to a god? So it could be based on that Rambam that there's a halach of kavush tachas yad Yisrael. Okay. Now we're up to Miu Kosher. So I'll just read to you the introduction here to this part of Tosfos in the Biurei Tosfos. He writes, La sugya be'ezu neshach the Katan elo zchia element rabbanon ulefi zelo mishkachas lo ger min haTorah el b'mishin is gaira imo kshehimu beres. So we're saying now that if Katan has no zchia on a doraisa level, but the zachir the Katan is only the rabbanon, so that means that the only case of ger katan doraisa is if the mother was misguided together with the child. Umiu kosher. Me'ahi the pericomatic subis the amrinon ger katan matbilin osal das bezdin. We're not talking about a pregnant woman who was misguided and then she gave birth. No. We're talking about taking a ger katan, taking a katan and making him into a ger. Al das bezdin. So what does that mean? Zachar the Adam Shalom B'fana. Well, that's only the Rabbana. Ulachol mili choshev ger latiro b'vas Yisrael. We're going to allow this ger to marry a Jewish woman. V'kiddusha of kiddusha. Now we validate his kiddusha. U'banav cholzin v'yavim. L'chol mili doraisa. So here we see explicitly that this gerus through Zachar the Adam Shalom B'fana. Till now we said we don't need Zachar the Adam Shalom B'fana in the case of Muberes, Shen is Gaira. But now we're talking about a ger katan. That Madbilin also das Bezdin. That Bezdin took this ger, this katan, and made him into a ger. That means that they supply the das. And there's Zocher in Kedushas Yisrael on behalf of the katan, the goy katan. But that's only the Rabbana. And yet he's got the status of a ger, gomur. We're allowing him to marry a Jewish girl. If he marries a Jewish girl, it's valid kedushin. And bottom cholz in the yavim, etc. All dinim doraisa. How is that possible? There's no zachim doraisa per katan. So Tosfos now hints at an answer, but he rejects it. Below mashma, we shouldn't say that in truth, on a doraisa level, the gerus is invalid. But the Rabbanan are going to consider him as a ger and limatir him. Yeah, but that's the Gemara's Tosfos immediately rejects this. Chado, he rejects it first. So the koch the chacham to be oker dom in Torah, like don't take a shofar on Rosh Hashanah if it's Shabbos. That's b'shevi altas. But now we're allowing you to marry a Jewish girl. That's kuvaseh. That's not within the purview of yesh koch biyad chacham lakav dom in Torah. Right, the chacham do not have the power to tell you you're allowed to eat pork, or the non-Jewish man is allowed to have a relationship with a Jewish woman. The Yod, and furthermore, but the fact that the Gemara asks, what's the chiddush? We have a principle called Zochel Yom Shol B'fanav. So Bezin is Zochel the Yiddishkeit on behalf of the Katan. Why do I need a chiddush here? And yet there is a tremendous chiddush because we're talking about a katan, and Zochel Yodam is only the Rabbanon, and now we're setting him up as a ger gomer doraisa. The matir b'vas Yisrael. Venira says Tosfos the zchia the gerus lo dami l'shar zechirus. So Tosfos now is again trying to circumvent the problem of Zoch L'Yodam Shelo B'fanav in the case of a Katan. And he says that this Schia is fundamentally different than any other Schia. How so? The Masha Bezdin Matbilan also Einam Zochim Ba'avuro. It's not through the power of the agency of Zechia on behalf of the Katan. El Huzocha Bi'atzmo Ubegufo. Shenasa Ger V'nichnas Tachas Kanfei Shechina. So what does that mean? I don't get it. Where's the das? You need Zochel Yodam Shelo B'fanav for the das. Really doesn't make much sense. Let me just see if the Masifta adds anything here. He writes, Af Lemandi Omar, the Zochin Lakotan Hainu Midrabanan Hodim Agarin also Mahani Afno Rice. Okay. For what? I mean, one thing I can tell you that's pretty clear, but that's not going to give me a, I can go around second base, maybe third base even, but not to home plate. In Zechia, Ruvain is Zoch on behalf of Shimon, and Ruvain does the action, the Maisa Kinyan, on behalf of Shimon. That's not what's happening here in Gerus, because the Maisa Gerus is going down to the mikvah. And the Ger himself is going down to the mikvah. The tefillah, in the language of Tosfos, is begufo. Uzocha bi'atzmo ubegufo. So when do we say that Zechia doesn't work on behalf of a Katan? That's when the Zocha is doing the Maisa Kinyan on behalf of Katan. So therefore, the Katan is, so to speak, appointing this person as his Shliach, such that his Maisa relates back to the Katan. And that's impossible. But in the case of Gerus, the Katan himself is undergoing Gerus. He's doing the Maisa Gerus. He's going into the mikvah. But Gufo will be Atzmo Nasa Ger. So we're not taking the Maisa of the Shaliach and relating it to the Mishalech. In this case, the Mishalech himself The Katan himself is going into the mikvah. He's doing the Maisa Tefillah, Maisa Gerus. But again, it still doesn't answer my question. What about Das? So we have no choice but to assume that the Mezakeh is supplying the Das. The Maisa Kinyan, in this case the Maisa Gerus, is being effectuated by the Katan himself. The Das is supplied by Bezdin, who are operating on his behalf. Why? Because Zachar the Adam Shalom Fanav. And we're assuming now that since he's a Katan, Velotam Tam Disur, then becoming a Ger is a schutz. It's something positive. So we could supply the Das as long as the Katan himself does the Maisa. Because then we're not operating Midin Shlichus, but rather Midin Zachar the Adam Shalom Fanav. Because in every case of Zachar the Adam Shalom Fanav, the person is not there, the Zochim is not there to give his da, that has the kaf. So let me just read to you what he writes here. These are those pages that I think did I send you all the pages or maybe some of the pages? He says, L'chora ha'yedira levar divrei atos, what's a lover deschia v'geris lo domi l'shar zechiyos. To be alma, maisa kinyan nas al yidei acher, that's the mezaker, avur hazoch, midin zoch ne'am shlo b'fonam, v'kai gav naktin deschia mitam shlichutu. Masha enke beger koton, shamaisa tefila v'amilo, nas begufo, it's not like Gerbi Atzmo Oses Maisa Gerus. So how the boy is here. Hainu Rakideshi Yochel Daslis Gaya. We came at the Zoch and the Olam Shalom Fanav, Uskusi Lo. I'm reading the Choshev Ki Ilu Yesh Kan Daito Lis Gaya. So apparently you're not working even shlichus here. Because the Katan himself is doing the Maisa Gerus. Ach, mikayim d'azchia hi rak avur chalos hadas, v'lo etzem ha-maisa zchia, chala shalom mikam shlichus. Oh. So when you have a full-fledged Zoch Ne'odem Shalom Fanav, both in terms of Das and in terms of the Maisa, that operates midin shlichus. But if Zoch Ne'odem Shalom Fanav operates without the Maisa, because the Zoch himself is doing the Maisa, then it's only Das, and here it's not mitam shlichus. It's just pure zechir. Okay, then that's what I wanted to accomplish today. There's a lot more here, this Tosas, but it needs a lot more work. Okay, then. So let me wish you a great day and thank you so much.